Good evening, everyone, from the studios of the California Channel here in Sacramento. I'm John Myers of KQED News. I am the moderator of this one-hour debate. The two men in our studio are the only candidates on the ballot this November, the Democratic incumbent, Jerry Brown, and the Republican challenger, Neel Kashkari. Gentlemen, thank you both for being here tonight for this debate. We'll get started in just a moment. But first, let me introduce the journalist who, along with me, will be asking the questions in this debate. Dunia Elvir of Telemundo 52, news anchor, and Jim Newton, editor-at-large of the Los Angeles Times. This debate is being presented, of course, by the California Channel and its cable TV partners, along with KQED Public Media, the Los Angeles Times, and Telemundo 52. Now, the rules are very simple in this debate. Opening and closing statements of 60 seconds each, 90 seconds to answer a question. Then the other candidate is given 30 seconds for a rebuttal. If needed, I will occasionally step in and make sure that our candidates stick to the topics and answer the questions. Both candidates have agreed to the debate rules. We remind them, of course, to please stick to the issues facing the voters tonight. We tossed a coin to determine the order of the statements and the questions. Neel Kashkari won that coin toss, and he chose to end tonight's broadcast with the final closing statement. So let's begin the California debate. Our first opening statement tonight from the incumbent, Democrat Jerry Brown. Governor, good evening. You have 1 minute.
Thanks, John. You know, a lot of people forget the mess that California was in just 4 years ago. There were 1 million jobs that had been lost. Our budget deficit was astronomical, $27 billion. We hadn't had a budget on time in probably 10 years. There was bickering in Sacramento, Republicans fighting with Democrats. $27 billion. When I went up there, I rolled up my sleeves. I started cutting that budget. The legislature gave me one that I didn't think was tough enough. So I sent it back to them. I vetoed the first California budget in the history of this state. But it sent a very powerful message. And from there on out, we started doing the right cuts and making the right decisions. So that budget in 3 years, from $27 billion in the red, is now in a surplus, a solid surplus. Jobs. All the jobs we lost in the recession from the Wall Street meltdown, we got back. 1.4 million jobs. Our schools, instead of laying off 30,000 people, we're now increasing by 30% the funding available for all the kids.
60 seconds. Thank you, sir, Governor Brown. Republican Neel Kashkari, good evening, sir. Your opening statement, 1 minute.
Thank you, Governor Brown. Thank you to our moderators, and thank you to the viewers at home. Frankly, thank you for tuning in, the two of us, rather than the Packers and the Seahawks. I really appreciate it. I'm running for governor because I want to rebuild the middle class of California. I think Governor Brown means well, but his 40 years in government has left him out of touch with the struggles of working families. He's declared a California comeback, and yet our middle class is all but destroyed. You know, it's not that long ago we used to have some of the best schools in America here in California. Today our schools are ranked 46th out of 50 states. Not that long ago we used to have a vibrant job market. Today, our job market is ranked 44th out of 50 states, and we're #1 in poverty. But I know we can turn this around. I didn't come from a rich, powerful family. My parents were immigrants. I was a middle-class kid. But I've lived the American dream because I got a good education, because I was able to get a good job and work hard. I know we can rebuild the middle class if we work together, if we aim high. I've got the plans, and I've got the experience to get it done for all of us.
Mr. Kashkari, thank you for that opening statement tonight. And let's get right to the questions if we can. The first question, Neel Kashkari, it's for you, and it's for me. This is not a surprising question. This morning's new field poll has you 16 points behind the man sitting beside you here tonight. A few days ago, the mayor of Fresno, Ashley Swearingen, a Republican also running for statewide office this fall, said she's not even sure she's voting for you. So my question is, how can you win if a prominent Republican isn't even sure you should be governor?
Sure. I think Ashley Swearingen is going to make a terrific controller, and I'm strongly supporting her for controller, and I'm going to vote for the whole Republican ticket because we've got great candidates running this cycle. But she and I don't agree on everything, and we have very different views on the high-speed rail. I'm committed to canceling the high-speed train, Governor Brown's signature project. Look, we don't have money. It doesn't grow on trees. Governor Brown wants to spend $70 billion on the high-speed train, and as a result of that, we're only spending $2.7 billion on water storage. As a result of that, Governor Brown said, no, we can't afford a school bond. When Republicans and Democrats said we should be investing in schools, Governor Brown said no. Again, if we're spending $70 billion on the train, it crowds out all these other investments that we need to make. And so no two candidates are going to agree on everything, but my commitment to the people of California, if I'm elected governor, I'm going to cancel the high-speed train, and I'm going to invest in water in a very real way. You know, Governor Brown's own father led a major infrastructure investment in water all around the state. He understood, Pat Brown understood how critical water is. If I'm elected governor, I'm going to invest in water, not the train, because water and schools have to come before the high-speed train.
Thank you, Neel Kashkari. 30 seconds to you.
I think the question was, how do you expect to win, Neil? And I'll tell you, you don't really have much expectation to win because things have been accomplished in Sacramento. The budget deficit, this was the big thing. They're calling California a failed state, another Greece. It's now a surplus, a serious surplus. That's something very impressive. The jobs, we got 1.4 million jobs since the recession. Education, they were cutting arts programs and science and performance, and now we've injected $2,000 per student because of Proposition 30 that the voters passed. So I think people know California is not perfect. We got our problems, but boy, what momentum do we now have?
That's 30 seconds. Thank you, Governor. The next question in this debate is for Governor Brown. It comes from Dunia Elvira.
Governor Brown, many parts of Southern California depends on the water that comes from Northern California. Just last week, the federal government said your plan for new tunnels will break the law. What will you do now?
Well, thanks for bringing that up, because I've lived in Southern California and I have a ranch in Northern California, and I was born in San Francisco. It is true, a lot of the water is in the north, and a lot of the people are in the South. That's why my father passed Proposition 1 on the 1960 ballot, and that's been a marvel for California. It's created jobs and abundant agriculture and made California #1 in fruits and vegetables. But we've got a problem here. We have a delta system that protects the fresh water that goes to the farms, that goes not just to Southern California, but to Alameda County and to Santa Clara County. And that salt water is only protected by dirt levees. We have to find a way to make sure the conveyance through the Delta will withstand an earthquake or rising sea level or extreme weather events. And that's why for 50 years people have been trying either a peripheral canal or tunnels or some other kind of conveyance. We now have a plan. And the plan is going through the environmental impact process. Very extensive, 75,000 pages of analysis. It's not cooked yet. We're still taking comments. So over the next year, we will go over that. We'll look if anyone else has another suggestion. But I'm telling you, the way we protect the water in the middle of California and in the South, while balancing what is right for the North and the water rights of the Northern California rights holders, it's going to take something like the Proposition 1 that will be on your ballot. And by the way, I hope people will vote for Proposition 1. That is the water bond.
Governor, your time is up. Your time's up. 30 seconds. Neel Kashkari on water.
I'm very concerned about the tunnels. $25 billion for these tunnels, and the Obama administration has serious concerns. Look, if you look at Governor Brown's legacy of infrastructure projects, take the Bay Bridge, many billion dollars over budget, many years late. If that's the track record, this thing is going to cost $50 or $75 billion by the time we're done with it. I'm an aerospace engineer. When I look at a big engineering project that's way over budget and way over delay, I have real concerns about mismanagement. I'm not going to plow ahead with $25 or $50 billion into the tunnels. We're going to put a brake on that, study it, make sure we get it right.
So no tunnels,
no
Mr.
tunnels.
Kashkari. And no tunnels then, Governor.
Look,
quickly, please.
This has been on the table for 50 years.
Okay.
If that salt water intrudes, half the water to Silicon Valley will disappear in a matter of days. And that'd be a catastrophe for the economy of California. And I don't think this man really understands what's at
look,
stake.
the Obama EPA is saying that your tunnel program is fundamentally flawed. That's your own president, President Obama, who's saying that, not me.
Okay, thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
It doesn't make it right, by the way.
It's a complicated issue, and no doubt we'll get more. Let's move to another question in this debate. Comes from Jim Newton of the Los Angeles Times, and it's for Neel Kashkari.
Mr. Kashkari, as I'm sure you know, just a few hours ago, the governor of Nevada and the head of Tesla announced that the battery factory that Tesla's building is going to go to Nevada. My question for you is, do you believe that California and Governor Brown did enough to keep Tesla here? And specifically, would you have favored granting special tax benefits or relief from environmental regulation in order to get that factory?
Look, I don't think Governor Brown did nearly enough on Tesla and any number of businesses. Governor Brown frequently says, well, businesses come and go. It's not businesses coming and going. It's Tesla, it's Toyota, it's Schwab, it's Nestle, on, and they're all going. There's a real problem. You know, in the 4 years that Governor Brown's been governor, we've been ranked 50th out of 50 states, 50, 50, 50, and 50, 4 years in a row for business climate. If you look in Wisconsin, Governor Walker, who's been governor for the same term, started out 41st in business and job climate, and today they're 17th. That's real progress that you can make in a few years. Governor Brown hasn't done the work. Governor Brown has said we need CEQA reform, the environmental laws that are stymieing business investment. And then you threw in the towel, Governor. You said it's too hard, it can't be done, it's God's work, but we can't do it. So instead, you try to give one-off deals to big companies that hire high-priced lobbyists. My whole plan, and you can go to my website, neelkashkari.com, read my jobs plan, is to bring the governor's own expedited environmental review to all businesses, not just to Tesla, not just to the Sacramento Kings new stadium, to big businesses, medium businesses, small businesses. We need to improve our overall economic climate so all of our job creators can do their best, can grow, can put California families back to work. We have to rebuild the middle class of California, and that means we need to bring good jobs to California. Tesla is one of many examples of this failure of this administration.
Governor Brown, 30 seconds to you on the Tesla issue.
It's pretty clear what happened. We fought hard for Tesla, but Tesla wanted a massive cash upfront payment that I don't think would be fair to the taxpayers of California. Now, we wish them well, because when Tesla wanted to build an electric car, they built it in Fremont, California. And cars are coming off the line every day. Electric cars are a big part of our future. We have 1 million electric car goal in California, and we're going to meet it. In order to really get there, we need Tesla to bring down the cost of batteries. So I wish them well. But California is the leading state for renewable energy and also electric cars. We have 30% of the electric cars in the whole country.
Governor. Thank you. I'm glad you asked about cars, if I could, because the next question is for me, and it is for Governor Brown. Governor, you're a strong advocate of California's 2006 climate change law. Next year, that effort expands to include new rules on the production of fuel, as we know. And it seems everybody now believes that that is going to raise gas prices in 2015. Your administration also believes that. How do you defend an increase in gas prices to hardworking families who may be struggling in California?
Look, these are the same scare tactics that the automobile companies said when California wanted to improve mile efficiency. They fought us. And as Attorney General, I had to go to court against the big Detroit automakers. They kept saying it'll be the sky will fall if California raises the vehicle mile standards to 40 or 50 miles a gallon. But what happened? The automobile companies went bankrupt. Then Obama stepped in, and the California standard is now the national standard. We do have a cap and trade program. The reason is climate change is a global challenge. It's an existential threat to our way of life. Also, the pollution from oil and coal and the other fossil fuels affect the asthma rates, respiratory diseases. So we have a cap on the amount of carbon that the oil companies can emit. If they go below that, if they don't meet that cap and they go above it, we need an allowance. And they have to buy that allowance. And with that money, we buy transit, we buy high-speed rail, we buy green buildings.
Governor, I agree with you, but if I may, the question was, but if I may, sir, the question was that gas prices, the Air Resources Board also says gas prices will go up.
Look, price today, I looked on the internet, and I saw a variation of $1.50. In California right today. The oil companies know how to have their own pricing strategy. They go up and they go down. In the last 3 years, oil prices have varied by more than 10 cents 23 times. So I can't tell you what their pricing is going to be. I know it works. Chevron made $21 billion last year, and they are also, all these oil companies are threatening the well-being. Look at our forest fires. Look at the rising sea level. We have to do something.
Governor, that's time.
And the cap and trade method is a reasonable way to do it, and I think the rest of the country will follow us like they did on cars.
Thank you, sir. Neel Kashkari, 30 seconds,
Make
please.
no mistake about it. I'm an aerospace engineer. I believe in the science behind climate change. His plan is designed to raise the cost of electricity for working families, to raise the cost of your gas prices, to try to make alternatives more competitive. It is not fair to wall up working families by raising their gas and utility prices. And then the insult to injury, he's taking the money from that program to fund his high-speed train, which the LAO, the Legislative Analyst's Office, has said will not do a thing to help the climate. If I'm governor, it's not going to happen, I promise you.
Thank you, Mr. Kashkari. Let's move to another topic if we can. The next question is from Dunia Elvir and is for Neel Kashkari.
Mr. Kashkari, field poll results show 58% of California voters support, and they think the U.S. should support and also give shelter to the undocumented children coming to the United States while they decide what they're going to do with them on a long-term status. Last month, you said on cable TV show that when it comes to these children, we should send the kids back home to send a message. My question to you is, do you continue to stand by your statement in light of the 58% Californians disagreeing with you?
I'm the son of immigrants. I think that immigration adds tremendous value to our country, and immigration is very personal for me. And my heart goes out to the kids who are coming here from distressed countries, whether it's Guatemala or Honduras. My heart goes out to kids around the world, kids in Asia who are suffering, kids in Africa who are suffering. But the solution to the world's suffering kids is not an open border in America. So we need to treat the kids who are coming here with compassion and care and respect. And yes, we do need to send them home to their home countries. And then we need to work through the State Department and our aid agencies to try to improve living conditions all around the world. Hang on for a second, please. But the thing is, kids in California are suffering too. And what about the kids in California? You know, 9 kids in California sued Governor Brown for violating their civil rights.
Not the question.
It is
Mr.
the
Kashkari.
question. It's about what about the kids in California? We have finite resources. Who's going to stand up for the kids in California if the governor of California refuses to fight for them?
The question-
I'm going to fight for California
the
kids
question is-
first.
yes.
If you stand by the
Of
statement.
course I stand by the statement.
But you're saying you have
Absolutely.
compassion for
I have
children.
tremendous compassion. Is the answer to the world's needy kids an open border in America? Of course we have compassion. By the way, President Obama has said we need to treat the kids with compassion and send them home. Hillary Clinton has said we need to treat the kids with compassion, we need to send them home. We can't simply solve all the world's problems with an open border. We need to have sensible immigration laws. We need to embrace immigrants. And then we need to enforce our laws. And we need to take care of kids in California, Governor. They matter too.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kashkari. Governor Brown, 30 seconds,
Yeah,
please.
this is really a tragedy. It's a humanitarian challenge, not just a political football. I disagree with Mr. Kashkari. I believe the bill that the law that became enacted under George Bush that gave these kids a hearing, I don't think we ought to change that. And I think they ought to get a decent hearing because they're coming from Honduras and El Salvador and Guatemala, where some of them are facing gangs and murder, and girls are being put into prostitution. They came here all the way through Mexico, unaccompanied by adults. And so I think the least we can do
30
is follow
seconds,
the
sir.
law of California and give them a fair hearing.
Thank you. 30 seconds, sir. Let's move forward. The next question is from Jim Newton of the Los Angeles Times. I think we may be anticipating this is for Governor Brown.
Governor, as you know, and has just been alluded to, a Superior Court judge recently in the Vergara case concluded that teacher tenure in California protects teaching that is, as he said, grossly ineffective, and that the result of such poor teaching shocks the conscience. You announced last week that you were going to appeal that ruling, but I guess what I'd like to hear from you is whether you dispute those conclusions by the judge. In other words, whether you're appealing based on a legal difference of opinion or whether factually you disagree with the judge on this conclusion.
I'm appealing because the Constitution requires the Court of Appeal to invalidate the laws of California. Do I think there's a problem in the inner cities of California with the 1.6 million kids who speak no English at home, the kids who are homeless and are in poverty? Yes, I do. I went and became mayor of Oakland, and I cared about kids, and that's why I started 2 charter schools, the Oakland Military School and the Oakland School for the Arts. At the Oakland Military School, we had 10% of the kids that were homeless. Most of the parents were just single. They weren't married. They didn't have 2 people in the household. Many of them had very uncertain jobs. There was gunfire in the streets. So these kids were under a lot of stress. That school's been going for 12 years, and I can tell you, I appreciate the challenges. And those challenges are good teachers, but it's decent money and it's accountability. And California has now adopted, in the last 2 years, a revolutionary educational reform that puts more money into those classrooms where the challenges are toughest. Foster care kids, poor kids, and kids who don't speak English. With Proposition 30 and the local control formula that puts more of the money where it's needed, California is acting where we need it most. And as far as bad teachers, they have no place in the classroom. That's why I signed AB 215. If it's not enough, we'll do further next time.
Okay.
Just a
Very quickly.
Do you believe that teacher tenure contributes, the tenure system in California contributes to that ineffective teaching and the problems you've just described?
In the case itself, it said it was 1 to 3%. It obviously has some impact, but I'm telling you, the lack of language, the lack of income, and the lack of disproportionate funding, which we're now doing, I think those are a major factor. And I base that on my charter schools that I started and have been going for 10 years.
Let me move to Mr. Kashkari for fair rebuttal, please, sir.
The judge got it exactly right. This is one of the most important civil rights cases in years, not just in California, in the country. 9 kids sued Governor Brown, and said that their civil rights, as guaranteed by the California Constitution, are being violated by our failing schools. You had a choice between fighting for the civil rights of poor kids and fighting for the union bosses who funded your campaigns. You sided with the union bosses. You should be ashamed of yourself, Governor. I'm going to fight for the kids. I'm going to fight for the kids. I want you to know that.
That makes no sense at all.
Yeah.
That is so false.
It's
Okay,
absolutely true, Governor.
No, it isn't.
It's absolutely
It's
true.
false.
It's absolutely true.
Gentlemen,
You
I don't
make a
think
lot-
we're going to disagree. I don't think we're going to agree on this issue tonight.
I don't think we will.
But
I can tell you
the points are well taken. Governor, we need to move on. We need to move on. I appreciate it. You can address it maybe in your closing statement. Let me move on to Mr. Kashkari. It's a
You can
question.
call me Neil, by the way. Everybody else does.
We'll get to all the names here before the evening's over here on the California debate. This is a question from me, if I could, and I want to change a little bit and talk a little bit about you. California voters don't know you very well yet. You wrote and you championed the 2008 bailout of some of America's biggest banks, known as TARP. You then took a job with PIMCO, the investment firm here in Southern California, a company that news reports say made a direct profit from TARP-backed securities. So my question is, TARP an asset or a liability on your resume?
Oh, it's an asset. When our nation faced the worst economic crisis literally since the Great Depression, two presidents, President Bush and President Obama, asked me to help lead the response. And we hated the financial crisis. We wanted to let all the banks fail because they deserved to fail. They made lousy investments and no one owed them anything. But when our entire economy was on the verge of collapse and literally your ATM wouldn't work, literally you wouldn't be able to cash your paycheck, that's when President Bush and then President Obama stepped in and said, no, we have to stabilize the economy on behalf of the American people. And you know what? The experts said you can't. You can't get it done. You can't do big things. You can't get Republicans and Democrats to work together. We rejected those experts. And we got George Bush and Barack Obama to work together. By the way, we got Nancy Pelosi and John Boehner to work together. We brought them together. We worked to stabilize the economy, and then we protected the taxpayers. You know, I ran a program, $425 billion, about 3-4 times the size of the California budget. We got every dollar back, and we've made a $13 billion profit off the taxpayers. And you know, Governor Brown, 4 years ago, he praised President Obama's leadership, and you're debating against Meg Whitman, for President Obama's role in stabilizing the banking sector. That was actually me, Governor. Thank you for that compliment. I'm absolutely proud of my time in Washington, and I'm proud that we got Republicans and Democrats to work together. And if we could get them to work together in Washington, I know we can get them to work together in Sacramento for the people of California.
Governor Brown, 30 seconds, please.
Well, when you're handing out money, you can get everybody to go along. The system was stabilized, but the bonuses that were given after that bailout, $32 billion. Talk about destroying the middle class. That exacerbated the inequality and the unfairness that Wall Street has been guilty of and has contributed so much to the problems in California with the home foreclosures and the unemployment. And then, yeah, let's bail them out. But don't give them bonuses on top of all the money that the taxpayers have to pay. So the people who caused the problem, they got rewarded, and the people who suffered, they didn't get any home relief on their mortgages.
I gave you a slight extra bit on the Vergara question. Very briefly, Mr. Kashkari, very briefly.
Governor Brown, you're being sued by housing nonprofits for raiding $400 million that was earmarked for California distressed homeowners. You spent it somewhere else, and now you're being sued by nonprofits. That's your record, Governor.
Somewhat of a different topic.
It's not a different topic.
Okay.
It's exactly related to this.
It's
true.
Sued
it's
every
true.
day of the week.
Okay.
By 9 kids
Gentlemen.
and by housing nonprofits.
No,
That's
by,
a heck of a
by
record.
hundreds of people who
Once
love
again.
to use our courts. That's silly.
Once again, it's a good clash, just like the football game on the other channel. Let's go to the next question here in the California debate, coming from the studios of the California Channel in Sacramento. It is for Governor Brown from Dunia Elvira.
Governor Brown, one of your biggest programs has been realignment, sending more felons to county jails and probation. But some of those felons have committed new crimes, and some crime rates are actually going up. Is realignment a success, or has it just moved the problem from the state to the counties?
Realignment is the biggest change in our prison system probably in the last 40 years. Now, anything in government takes time. You're not going to get over it in a year or two. This is a long-term process of realigning what the counties do and what the states do. And in realignment, we said the lower offenders, the less offenders, they should not come in and out of state prison like a revolving door. And what happened is, over the last 30 years, California increased its prisons by 500%, but they didn't put the money in. So as a result, the medical care was bad, the conditions were crowded, and the U.S. Supreme Court made us reduce our population. In order to do that, in order to do that, we said on the lower offenders, those should take place at the county, but not just putting them in jail. We need mental health services, drug treatment, day reporting, monitoring by GPS. And with Proposition 30, we guaranteed billions of dollars for local counties to pay for the programs. And it is working. That's why the people that carry it out, the sheriffs of California, endorsed my candidacy, along with the police chiefs. This is a very important measure. It's by no means perfect, but the violent crime rate is not going up. There have been, in some places, spikes in property crime. But overall, I would say the first 2 years is a success, and we will continue the momentum going forward.
Governor, thank you. 30 seconds, Mr. Kashkari.
The program is absolutely a failure. Don't kid yourself. Governor Brown said he's not going to release dangerous people, only non-serious, non-threatening, and they're being released onto our streets, and they're committing heinous crimes again. Okay, look, there's a guy in Stockton, I hate to say these words because it's horrible, 39-year-old man who was released by Governor Brown, who went on and robbed and raped and murdered his own grandmother. These are dangerous people that are being released onto our streets. If I'm elected governor, I'm going to keep these dangerous people locked up. If we need to rent more bed space somewhere else, then we're going to rent more bed space somewhere else. Releasing felons onto our streets is not a way of making us safer.
And the courts have said you might not be able to do that, sir.
Well, we're going to fight the courts to do that. There's no question. If the choice is release them onto our streets and have our communities be unsafe, that's an unacceptable option.
Okay, thank you, sir. Let's move to another topic here. It's a question for Neel Kashkari from Jim Newton.
I want to return to something you mentioned earlier, which is CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. Both of you have argued for the need for some reform for CEQA. Many people believe it impedes job growth, as I think both of you have said. But it also has really been a mainstay of environmental protection in this state since 1970. I guess my question to you is, what reforms do you envision specifically that would speed up development and growth, but that would not do so at the expense of the environment?
Sure. Well, I'll tell you, I'm going to use Governor Brown's own reforms. So when the Sacramento Kings were going to leave, and the NBA said we need a new arena, and they looked at this and they said, well, if it goes through the normal environmental review process, CEQA, it's going to take years extra and millions of dollars of additional cost. So Governor Brown signed an expedited review, gave him a special deal, and said we're going to speed that process up, we're going to limit the number of lawsuits so that there is still a review. We're not chucking all the environmental rules, but let's make it reasonable, let's make it efficient, let's make it predictable. That's a good plan. But instead of just giving it to those who are politically connected, who can hire high-priced lobbyists like the Sacramento Kings or like some of the big businesses that he's given this deal to, he tried to give it to Tesla, why don't we actually adopt that new standard and make it available to everyone? Big businesses, medium-sized businesses, small businesses, farms, anybody who wants to invest in California. Look, all of these policies are well-meaning, but this is why jobs are leaving the state. This is why we have the highest poverty rate in America, 24% poverty. How can that be, this great state? It's because we've done this to ourselves. A lot of well-meaning policies that make the state not jobs-friendly. We're 50th out of 50 states. Jobs leave, and our poverty rate goes up. So let's not chuck all regulations, but let's have smart, sensible regulations where businesses can invest. We can improve the business climate, bring jobs back here, rebuild the middle class.
Governor, CEQA reform, 30 seconds. To you,
look, I've been fighting for CEQA reform since I was mayor of Oakland. And yes, there's a lot of political pressure. You can get an exemption. Very hard to get it generally across the board. But if we can, we certainly will. There are reforms you can make, but it is, ever since Ronald Reagan put it into the statute books and the courts expanded it going back to the 70s, it's been quite a challenge to reform it. But that's not the thing that's holding California back. We've created 1.4 million jobs. We've raised our minimum wage. We've extended health care. So instead of having 22% without health care, we only have 11. California is a land of opportunity. This is the place of Google. This is the place of dreams, of the best agriculture in the whole country. So I know we're hearing California run down and how bad it is and poverty and no jobs. That's not the picture of California that I know and love. I love this state and I know it works. And I can tell you this, in the last 4 years, we haven't solved all the problems, but boy, what momentum we have.
Thank you, Governor Brown. The next question is for you, sir, the incumbent here, and it's from me. Governor, we all know, and we should make it clear, you did not create the high-speed rail project. It existed before you came back in office, but you have become its biggest champion, I think. Republicans in Congress keep telling you California is not going to get the $38 billion from Washington that project anticipates. And so, Governor, can you tell voters tonight, right now, will high-speed rail be built if the feds do not give you the money?
It will, and it will for a very simple reason. It's cheaper than building highways and airport runways. This is something a lot of people forget. To expand to meet our 10 million new people, or even 15 million, we'll have to either expand Interstate 5, build more freeways, more airports, more runways. If we take part of that burden and put it into high-speed rail, it'll be cheaper, it'll be cleaner, we're not going to burn oil, we're going to use the sun and the wind, and it will help where we need jobs the most. That high-speed rail is starting in the Central Valley, and that's why the mayor of Fresno, a Republican, supports high-speed rail, because it will create jobs where they're needed most. We're investing $2 billion of state money, we're getting $3 billion of federal money on this first phase, and that will have $8 billion of impact economically. It's a good bet for the Central Valley, it's good for California, and it helps lower the carbon footprint in California.
We have a little bit of time, and I'm going to just give a moment here, because Mr. Kashkari calls it a crazy train. He says, stop the crazy train. Governor, is it a crazy train?
No, I think he's more familiar with the gravy train back in Washington that paid out $30 billion in bonuses, or at least sat silently by while they happened. No, this train makes a lot of sense. 15 other countries have high-speed rail. China, which on a per capita basis is poorer than America, or poorer than California, they've just built 5,000 miles. They're going to build another 1,000 miles to get to Tibet. This makes sense. We can do it. And just like the Panama Canal, they said you couldn't build that, you couldn't build BART, but we did it, and we'll do it with high-speed rail. We did it within the 90 seconds almost. I asked you that question. Mr. Kashkari, 30 seconds.
Make no mistake about it. He's raising your gas prices, you at home, he's raising your gas prices to fund his vanity project called the high-speed train, what I call the crazy train. You know, they talk about creating jobs. You know what else creates jobs? Building water storage all around the state, not one dam like his little water bond, a real infrastructure investment in water. My plan is to cancel that train, go back to the voters, take the $10 billion they've authorized for the bonds for the train, and invest it in water. The construction projects both create jobs, but let's have something useful that can feed our state for the next several decades by investing in water in a real way, not just one little storage project like your water bond. And so it is the crazy train. That's why even your own Lieutenant Governor, Gavin Newsom, has said this makes no sense. We got to cancel the train and invest in higher priorities, whether it's schools, whether it's water. We have a lot of other infrastructure investments we need to make, not the crazy train, Governor.
Okay, thank you, sir. We're going to move to another topic here. This is the California debate, the race for governor 2014, from the channels of from the studios rather of the California channel. Dunia Elvir, your question next is to Mr. Kashkari.
Mr. Kashkari, 6 years ago, California voters approved a ban on same-sex marriage, Proposition 8. You were one of the 130 conservatives who signed a brief urging the U.S. Supreme Court to overturn Prop 8. How do you explain your position to the people of California who supported Prop 8?
Yeah. I want the government out of our lives. And, you know, like Governor Brown, I thought that that law was wrong, banning same-sex marriage. To me, if two people want to get married, that's between the two of them and God bless them. And I hope they have a wonderful life, whoever they are. And so my focus is on rebuilding the middle class. I think the government should stay out of our lives and let Californians live the life that they want to live. And by the way, I applauded Governor Brown and Attorney General Harris for exercising their discretion in not appealing that case, which completely flies in the face of what Governor Brown said earlier today, that he was obligated to appeal the Vergara case. He exercised appropriate discretion, and I applauded him for doing that in not appealing the Prop 8 ruling. I just wish he could use the same discretion in fighting for poor and minority kids in California, which he's chosen not to do.
Neel Kashkari, thank you. Jerry Brown, 30 seconds.
You know, what a salesman. I guess that's what you learned that on Wall Street, where they sold all that stock that went sour. I care a lot about poor kids in the state. That's why I did create charter schools in Oakland, why I went to be mayor of a tough, hard-scrabble city, and why I created the local control formula. We're, I think, the only state that spends a significant extra amount to go to the schools where they have poor kids and kids that don't speak English. I mean, this is the real answer. Vergara could have a very strong impact, but only if it's validated by the Court of Appeals. Our Constitution, Article 3, Section 5 says a Superior Court, that was the federal court. A Superior Court judge can't invalidate this law. I signed 215 to get rid of bad teachers. No one wants bad teachers in the schools of California, certainly not me. If that doesn't go far enough, enough, we'll take more steps at the next legislative session.
Okay, I think we both kind of pivoted there a little bit off the topic, but I appreciate the passion here. The next question in this debate is from Jim Newton, and it's for the incumbent, Jerry Brown.
Governor, you have called California's unfunded pension debt enormous and ever-growing. And my question to you is, what can and will you do in your fourth term as governor that you haven't been able to do in your third term as governor to turn around the pension situation?
All right, well, let's see, because there's some of this imaginary here makes you wonder, is this California or are we in Arkansas or Mississippi? I mean, this is the 8th largest economy in the whole world. Before I became governor, it was the 9th largest. So we're making progress. 1.4 million jobs, a deficit 27 billion, a wall of debt 32 billion. Now, we paid down the deficit, we paid down half the wall of debt, we did pension reform. We stopped spiking. We raised the age of retirement. We made employees pay 50% of the normal cost of pensions. And in addition to that, we put a cap on the pensions themselves. We've now funded, over the period of decades, our teachers' retirement that was on course to go bankrupt. Is it enough? No. But I can tell you, I've been in government a fairly long time. Things don't get done with a press release or a glib statement. They take many, many years. We've made major progress. The first pension reform, probably in California's history, I enacted last year. We got Republicans as well as Democrats. We'll do more. But this is not easy. So in my next 4 years, yeah, we'll go further in the pension for the PERS. We'll do something about retiree health care. And most importantly, we'll keep paying down our wall of debt. Arnold Schwarzenegger borrowed $15 billion. He called it a recovery bond. It was really a credit card. This year, we're going to pay that off finally. And when we pay that off, that's less debt service, and then we can take care of our other bills.
Thank you, sir. Neel Kashkari, 30 seconds,
Governor,
please.
you like to say that we're the 8th largest economy. When you were first governor, we were the 5th largest economy. We're not heading in the right direction. We got to turn this around.
Republican governors since then.
Okay, please, sir. Governor.
We need to turn this around. We need to rebuild the middle class. The governor is not being honest with us about pensions. The total liabilities that we're on the hook for is about $500 billion. The first thing he did as governor is throw people off the boards of these agencies that were fighting for honest accounting. And so right now, CalPERS and CalSTRS are predicting the stock market's going to go to the moon for the next 20 years, and Governor Brown's own budget doesn't call that into question. The first thing I will do as governor is appoint people to these boards who are committed to honest accounting, to be honest with you, the people of California, on how much you and we are on the hook for. And that's how we bring people together. Be honest about how big the hole is. Bring people together, start a real process, not just tinkering around the edges, incrementalism, aim high, work together, we can get it done.
Next question in this debate is for you, Mr. Kashkari, from me. You've called the Affordable Care Act, which is known as Obamacare, a quote, a jobs destroyer. No state has done more to make Obamacare a reality than California, a lot of it under the man sitting next to you. If elected, would you try to dismantle it here in California, the exchange, all of it?
No, I want to fix it. And here's the thing, Obamacare is very personal for me. My plan was canceled, true story, under Obamacare. My premium went up 27%, and now I can't go to the old doctor that I used to go to. Those are all true. But the good news is I have enough money, I can still afford it, so I'm okay. I've got good health insurance. But I have huge concerns when 16% of Californians, I mean, this is an indicator. Governor Brown says we're back, but 16% of Californians either have no job today or stuck in a part-time job. He says that, we're not talking about real California, but you at home, do you think we're back? Do you think that you've got the job that we want? Hang on for a second. I'm coming to it. I'm coming to it.
Thank you.
Do you have the job that we want? Well, we have a major piece of federal legislation that literally incentivizes reducing worker hours and reducing the number of full-time employees. So I have very big concerns about Obamacare through what it's going to do to the job market when it incentivizes employers to cut back on workers. So we got to fix it. We need a health care plan in California and nationally that incentivizes both job creation as well as affordable health care that people can afford and get the access that they need. Now, as governor, this is the federal law of the land. I can't unilaterally just change the program and redesign it. So one of the things that I will do is I'm going to go to Washington and push them to say, look, we need to make big changes. I don't want to chuck it.
But you won't cancel the exchange.
I'm not going to cancel the exchange.
Okay, thank you.
But we need to fix it so that we can put Californians back to work. That's my highest priority.
Thank you, sir. Governor Brown, 30 seconds, please.
I mean, there's so many glib statements here that don't comport with reality. I don't know where to start. I feel like I'm getting a sales pitch from I don't know whom. Yeah, Neil. Well, you learned your job well there, working at Goldman Sachs and the rest of the people who wrecked the economy. And we had to bail them out, though. It's kind of like the arsonist putting out the fire. I really appreciate that. But let's get to the facts here. California is doing the best job putting Obamacare into practice. Sure, there are problems. You know, vegan government is a messy business. You got two parties, two branches of government, or rather two houses. But we're making real progress, and what I'm most proud of that the number of uninsured is going down to 11%. It used to be closer to 25%. So that's good, and that's what we're trying to do. And by the way, when you talk about the poor people, I'm the one who's raising the minimum wage to $10. I'm the one who gave Latinos driver's licenses so they could legally drive to work. And there's a million of them who aren't documented, who are picking our food and working in our factories.
Thank you, sir. And as we move on here into what I'd call the home stretch of this debate, a question close to this issue, Dunia Elvir for Governor Brown.
Governor Brown, now that you mentioned the illegal immigrants, it's around 1.4 million undocumented immigrants that are getting ready to get the driver license that you just mentioned this January 2015. Unlike normal California driver license, they will get one with a marking, and it's going to show and indicate to everybody their undocumented status. Many of them are watching you right now through Telemundo, by the way. Do you have a strategy to monitor and ensure profiling will not become a problem with these newly issued licenses?
Well, I can tell you, our California Highway Patrol will protect the rights of all California drivers. And we're still fighting with the Obama administration to get a marking that we feel will not be a lead to discrimination. But the most important thing is so many people, over 1 million people, will be able to legally drive to work. And that's been really a shocking thing, that we depend on people's labor, but we won't let them legally get to the job. But we will not let the difference, and it's a difference because the federal law requires an indication. It's not good for federal identification purposes. It's only good for California. But that's a big thing. There were people who were getting arrested, taking their kids to school, going to the job site, going out to our farms. So I think the big thing is that California is empowering so many good, hardworking Californians. And it's really in the face of no action in Washington, gridlock, like we used to have in Sacramento. Before I got there, we had the place was in a shambles. The budget, we didn't have a water plan. We didn't have any pension reform. We had a huge wall of debt. But we're getting stuff together. And with respect to immigration, California is really setting the pace with our Trust Act. We're not arbitrarily holding people in jail, so the Immigration Service can go pick them up. I signed the DREAM Act, so kids who qualify for the university can go to school and get a scholarship. And I think that's going to build for the future, because so many of our kids, almost about 30%, are either undocumented or don't speak English.
Governor, very quick.
Yeah, very quick. The main thing is, do you have a strategy to monitor that this is not going to happen? Because even though if they train the CHP people, the police, I mean, they're going to have that driver license. Anybody can see it. If they go and try to open a bank account to buy something in the supermarket.
Number one,
very briefly,
I will instruct the Commissioner of the Highway Patrol to take whatever steps are necessary to prevent that. I will do the same thing working with the local police and sheriffs. And thirdly, to the extent that we hear anything, we will take immediate action upon those reports.
Thank you, Governor. Mr. Kashkari, would you have signed it, by the way?
Look, I think that the driver's license one, we need federal immigration reform. And one of my criticisms of Governor Brown is there are a lot of federal issues that affect California that he's basically said, well, it's not his issue, he can't affect it, it's federal law. As governor, I will be fighting for the people of California on federal issues too. And if that means I have to go to Washington to fight for federal reform, I'm going to do that. In driver's licenses, the case there is, yes, people are driving. I want them to be safe. I want all of our drivers to be safe. But we can't just solve this at a state level. We need federal legislation for the whole country. But in terms of discrimination, that was the key question. We have to fight discrimination throughout our society for every group. You know, as the son of immigrants myself, as a brown kid myself growing up, we have to fight to make sure every kid from every nationality, from every ethnic background, in every community is free from discrimination. And as governor, I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that that happens.
Can I just please, though, for people who are watching home, would you have signed it or vetoed it, though, sir?
I would have signed the driver's license,
Okay,
yes.
good, very good. Next question is to Mr. Kashkari from Jim Newton.
Governor Brown's predecessor, Arnold Schwarzenegger, was in some ways like you, a Republican, a moderate. He's the last Republican governor of this state. How do you rate his legacy, Schwarzenegger's legacy?
Look, I think I really admire Governor Schwarzenegger. This is a guy who came to America with nothing. He was an immigrant. He came here with his dreams, with his hard work, with his talents, and look what he accomplished. He built an amazing life for himself, tremendous success, and frankly is an inspiration for all of us. And I have some, I feel that resonates with me as the son of immigrants myself from a middle-class background. My dad wasn't governor. My parents were immigrants. I grew up mowing lawns and bagging groceries. And so for me to sit here today as the Republican nominee for governor, I'm so proud of our country that people like me and people like Schwarzenegger could achieve what we're achieving. I don't think that he was as successful as he would like to have been. One of the differences between the two of us is I spent 3 years in Washington, D.C., tackling the worst economic crisis that our nation has faced since the Great Depression. And everyone told us, Washington, D.C. is so complicated. You can't get Republicans and Democrats to work together. You can't navigate the House and the Senate. We figured it out. We got them to work together. Again, we got the leaders of both parties to put their country before their political careers. And that is what has inspired me to run now. Because if we could do big things in Washington, D.C. for the American people in a time of national crisis, the people of California, many of them are in crisis today. 24% poverty. Governor Brown doesn't like to talk about it, but 24% poverty today. Let me tell you, those families are in crisis, and I'm running for governor to fight for them.
Mr. Brown, 30 seconds, please.
Yeah, well, I've seen nothing, not a shred in his program that's going to help poor people. Quite the opposite.
Jobs, Governor.
It follows from your bonuses to your buddies at Goldman Sachs.
Schwarzenegger era we were talking about, though, Governor.
Pardon me?
The Schwarzenegger era was the question.
Well, that's another thing. During the time I was gone, 28 years, 23 years of that were Republican governors. And I think the way Arnold had some big plans. But, it does take some insider knowledge to get it done. Our state was in a shambles. They were calling it a failed state. Well, it's back. It's not all the way back, and he likes to create the construct that if we're not perfect, we're not making progress. We are making incremental progress. I'd say 1.4 million jobs, and we're recovering faster than the rest of the nation. We're moving forward. We have more money going to our schools, 30% more instead of layoffs, and we have a water bond, Proposition 1, and we have a rainy day fund to save funds for hard times when they come. And I hope everybody on their ballot this November will vote for Proposition 1 and Proposition 2.
Next question is from me, Governor. It's to you. This may be one of the simpler questions. Let's see. Let's give it a shot. One of the most talked about bills at the state capitol this year was a statewide ban on plastic bags. So let me ask you the simple question first. Paper or plastic?
Paper, I guess.
Will you sign this?
Well, no, I probably will sign it, yes. I'll tell you what, in fact, I'll tell you why I'm going to sign it. Normally I don't tell you ahead of time, and we let the bill get enrolled and I can read it. But here's the key thing. There are about 50 cities with their own plastic bag ban, and that's causing a lot of confusion. And that's why the grocers themselves said, let's have one statewide ban that's reasonable. And so this bill has been worked through, and this is the nature of the legislative process. This is a compromise. It's taking into account the needs of the environment and the needs of the economy and the needs of the grocers. So I think, on balance, this will protect the environment because we have far too much waste and throughput, but at the same time, we're doing it in a very standard way that will not disrupt business in California.
Mr. Kashkari?
No
30 seconds.
chance would I sign that.
No, you would veto it.
Look at what the legislature and Governor Brown have been working on for the last month. Banning plastic bags. Regulating football practice, because apparently the families of California can't decide for themselves how much football practice is enough. And the one that I loved last week, personally, Governor, I can now bring my dogs to restaurants. I'm a dog lover. I'm grateful for that. What they're not working on is rebuilding the middle class. Governor, you say, oh, you're making incremental changes. We're 46th in education. We're 44th for jobs. We're number 1 in poverty. The time for incrementalism is long since past, Governor. We actually need bold reforms to rebuild the middle class. Plastic bags is not going to do it. Bringing my dogs to restaurant is not going to do it, and neither is regulating football practice or soccer or baseball. We need to actually put people back to work, Governor.
Next question in this debate is for Dunia Elvir to Mr. Kashkari.
There are awful lots of California families that would like to see the governor do more when it comes to bringing down the cost of attending to a UC or a CSU school. What's the best way to make college affordable for all?
Yeah, this is a critical issue. When I went to graduate school, I took out $100,000 of loans, which is, let me tell you something, is a really scary thing to do for a kid. Are you able to pay it back? Now, I was fortunate. I was able to get a good job, so I was able to pay it back. So I meet a lot of California families. First of all, A lot of California kids can't get into the California universities because they're preferring to take out-of-state students because they pay higher tuition. Or then if they get in, they can't get the classes that they need. Or then if they do happen to graduate, they're graduating with thousands of dollars of debt and no jobs. So they're big issues here. I've looked at what other states have done. Our California schools are funded per student. So the more students they have, the more money they get from the state. Well, that sounds right, except it creates a perverse incentive. They're actually incentivized to collect students, hoard them on campus, not to graduate them, not to make sure that they can move along and get the classes that they need. So what other states have done is they change the funding model so that universities are actually incentivized to make sure kids get the classes they need, make sure they can actually graduate on time, make sure that we can have more students come in, and the incentives are aligned. So the first thing I would do as governor is change the incentives so the universities are focused on student outcomes. We have to put students first. We have to put students first. My dad was a professor at the local college. All right, the students have to come before the faculty, and making sure California kids, not out-of-state students, California kids come first. They get the classes they need, and then if we grow the economy with my jobs reforms, there are good jobs waiting for them when they graduate here in California.
Governor Brown, 30 seconds to you. What can you do about college costs that haven't
All right,
happened?
I froze tuition for 3 years at both the University of California and Cal State. Half the kids who go to the community colleges pay no tuition, and the tuition is among the lowest in the whole country. Kids graduating from California colleges have about half the debt that others have. And then to help the middle class, which, by the way, if you really examine my opponent's plan, there's nothing that will help the middle class. Nothing.
Cut, please.
No, it's pure.
Have you read it?
Yes, I have read, and I was very unimpressed, to tell you the truth. I signed the middle class scholarship. That's real money that helps kids that are above the poverty. So they don't get those scholarships, but are not rich enough to really afford to go. So we have a middle class scholarship. We've frozen tuition, and of course, we're going to do a lot of other things like online learning to bring down the costs and make classes more available.
What are you most worried, if I can, moderator's prerogative, about his plan? You said you've read it.
Well, because it says the answer to poverty
please.
is to create a job. And the only thing he wants to do about creating jobs is to get rid of unspecified regulations and reduce taxes. As a matter of fact, he opposed Proposition 30, which is putting the money into our colleges and universities, $500 million, and $5 billion into our K through 12.
I realize I
Hang on
cracked
for a second,
open the
hang on
door
for a
here. I
second.
did crack open the door.
Which taxes do you, in my plan, Governor, am I cutting? Curious if you know.
It's very vague.
No, it's not very vague. It's very specific,
No,
Governor.
Okay.
It's very specific,
I
Governor.
read it.
NeelKashkari.com/jobs. You can all read it
Thank
yourself.
you.
It's very specific.
Thank you. Okay.
I wish you would.
We're at the time where we're going to have to do closing statements, but I'm going to ask a question very quickly. This has been fun.
It has been fun.
I mean, we've had a lot of good things here. Why not another debate? Would you do another one, Governor?
I think we've exposed the differences.
Okay.
They're pretty clear to me. And by the way, this kind of a format, you can play it over and over
let's-
again at your house.
And I'm sure we'll have it on the California channel and other places. We are at that point now for closing statements in the California debate. Both candidates get 1 minute here. The first closing statement from Governor Brown.
Thank you. This has been a spirited debate, real differences of opinion. But I just want to get back to some fundamentals. 4 years ago, when I went to Sacramento, the place was in a shambles. We were being termed a failed state, just like Greece. That's not the case anymore. The majority of people in California feel we're on the right track. About 5 years ago, only 13% of the people thought we're on the right track. We are taking care of water. We're taking care of workers' compensation. We've created a rainy day fund. And this is the number. All the stuff you can hear, I know there's a lot of coming back and forth. But we lost 1.4 million jobs. Since I've been elected, almost 1.3 million have come back to California. And that isn't by accident, because we've lowered the sales tax on manufacturing. We are encouraging biocom and agriculture. California has its challenges, but we've got momentum and we're headed in the right direction.
Mr. Brown, Jerry Brown, the incumbent, thank you, sir, for your closing statement. And now the closing statement from the Republican challenger, Neel Kashkari. Sir, 1 minute.
Thank you very much. The key question here for you at home, the voters, is your family back? Are your kids in good schools today? Do you feel good about your job? Do you have the job that you want, the job that you deserve? I'm running for governor to fight for your family, to fight to rebuild the middle class so every kid in California has the same shot in life that I've had. I didn't come from a rich, powerful family. My parents were immigrants. I was a middle-class kid, but I got a good education. I was able to get a good job and work hard and live the American dream. I'm running for governor so every kid in California has the same chance that I've had, so you can get the job that you want, so you can work hard and build a better life for yourself and for your family. I'm dedicating not just my candidacy, But if I'm elected governor, my entire governorship to rebuilding the middle class for you, for your family, so you can live the life that you want to live. I don't think we're back. I think we can be back. We can make big changes. I don't settle for incrementalism. We have to make big changes. I've got the plans and the experience to do it, and I'm asking for your vote.
Thank you, Republican challenger Neel Kashkari. And let me thank also to the incumbent Democrat Jerry Brown. Spirited debate. I think it was, we had a good time. We could have brought the dogs in next time, the two Newfoundlands and the Corgi on that. Thank you to both candidates being here for the California debate. This is an early debate in the election season, but remember, the first ballots go out by mail in about 3 weeks, and overseas and military ballots, they go out before that. My thanks as well tonight, too, in this debate to Jim Newton of the Los Angeles Times and Dunia Elvir of Telemundo 52. Thank you both for being here. And, of course, to the California channel here in Sacramento and all of our partners in this debate, KQED, Telemundo, and the Los Angeles Times. The only other message here, folks, in this debate is really to all of you who are watching and listening at home. Vote in this election. It really matters. I'm John Myers from KQED News. Thank you. Good night.